Hi everyone, my name is Siana Moreno and I'm a student ambassador for Clovis Community College. I am back again today with Dr. Fontes, bringing you a new history video on the subject of Dia de los Muertos. And so the first question I have today for Dr. Fontes is going to be, what are the native roots of Dia de los Muertos?
So we know that the origins go way back around 3,000 years before Columbus. And the further back we go, the shadier the history becomes, the less we know. We know that it was originally, like it is today, a celebration of the dead, celebration of death, which is very different than our modern American or Western idea of death, right? Where we are, let me talk about this first. We are so separated from death and dying, and it's a scary thing to us, especially in modern America. If you go back 3 or 4 generations, I think death was more present even with Americans. Your grandpa died, you laid him out in the living room, and you call relatives and friends to come and see him over a course of a week. You have food and a celebration. Um, Not unlike the Day of the Dead, the death is very present. So you grew up surrounded by your great grandparents in death and dying. It wasn't something necessarily to be so afraid of. I think we've separated ourselves so much from this idea of death and dying that it's something that's very scary. So the origins is a celebration of the dead, and not only of the dead, but a celebration that they are living in another realm,
Mhm.
right? Which is different than a Christian context. When in a Christian context, well, there's two different ideas. One is that you're dead, you go to sleep, and you wait for the resurrection, and somehow you're sleeping. The other idea that's also Christian is that you go immediately to hell or immediately to heaven, right? And but there's really no sense of celebrating death itself, right? Because death is kind of like an evil thing.
Yeah, it has a different meaning in that religion
Sure.
respectively.
And we know that the further forward we come in history, we have more of an idea what the Aztecs, how the Aztecs celebrated, the Mexica celebrate Day of the Dead. It was a month-long celebration, and they celebrated the Queen of the Dead. Let me try to get this right. Micteca Kiwadol. She was the queen of the Lady of the Afterworld. And it was a month-long celebration with dancing and food and a celebration to remember those relatives and friends who have passed on to the afterlife. And they're actually living in another realm. They're living in an afterlife. They're not just buried and gone and dead in a modern sense, but they're living. And this time period was seen as a period when the veil between that other world and this world is at its thinnest, and there's crossover. And this is an idea that is actually in many cultures around the world, that at a certain time, usually in the fall, the veil between living and dead is thinnest, and the dead can cross over somehow, their spirits. So it was a month-long celebration. We know there's singing and dancing, and most likely some sacrifice, bloodletting, because the gods want blood. This is a manifestation of religion all around the world, that the gods need blood somehow. And this is an interesting human phenomena all around the world, which leads to the Christian idea that Jesus died for everyone's sins and he gave his blood. This culminates in the idea. So the Aztecs had the same idea that the gods want blood. So this is part of the ritual also. When the Spanish come and encounter the Aztecs and conquer Tenochtitlan and the Aztec peoples, many of the traditions that the Aztecs had become they coalesce with Spanish Catholicism. It's called Syncretism. The Virgin of Guadalupe is a wonderful example of that. You have an Aztec goddess, Tonantzin, that was venerated and worshipped by the Nahua people, the Mexica. And when the Spanish come, they use the Virgin Mary on their banners to conquer the native people. She's a war goddess. And that has a great impact on the Mexica and native peoples. So that very soon after the conquest, we have this new goddess emerge. That's a combination of Tonantzin, the Virgin Mary, Guadalupe, and she combined. So this goes back to the Day of the Dead. Many of the aspects of Day of the Dead were considered evil to the Catholic Church. But one aspect of how the Catholic Church grew across Europe for the previous 2,000 years was when they encountered pagan peoples. Pagan just means religion that's practiced in the countryside, but it has come to mean something that's not Christian or Catholic. Whenever they encountered pagan cultures, they would incorporate those beliefs into Catholicism and create something new. And the European nations are filled with this. Saint Bridget in England was a Celtic goddess. Saint George and the Dragon goes back to Greek mythology. These gods and goddesses become saints in the Catholic Church. And so this happens with Day of the Dead. There's the native peoples are allowed to keep many of the traditions, but wrap it in a Catholic shroud, right? And so the Spanish Church moves the month of celebration to coincide with the Catholic holidays, All Saints Day and All Souls Day, November 1st and November 2nd, to make it into one holiday that incorporates the Day of the Dead and the Catholic holidays themselves.
Oh, I didn't know that. That was interesting. I personally only found out about Dia de los Muertos maybe like in the 7th grade in my Spanish class. And
Yeah.
so all this information is pretty insightful. But also, as I mentioned, my grandpa grew up Catholic. I remember when a relative had passed away of mine, I didn't understand why all of my family was going over to my tia's house and they were praying over for a week. And so I was around the same age I found out about Dia de los Muertos. So I was like, oh, so this kind of goes hand in hand with it. So this further in-depth explanation makes more sense about how it correlates so much with the Catholic religion.
Sure. Yeah, and I didn't grow up with Day of the Dead either. And most people in Fresno in this area traditionally have come from the northern states in Mexico, right? Chihuahua, Oaxaca, not Chihuahua, Sonora, Baja, and the middle states around Mexico City, Jalisco, Michoacan, and north. Over the last couple of decades, more people from Oaxaca and Chiapas have come. And those are the regions that where Day of the Dead rituals have continued since the conquest, because these are areas where the Mayan live, Mayan types of people who saved their culture. Because there was a time during the conquest and afterwards when the Dominicans came to Mexico, and these were the friars who initiated the Inquisition. And anyone caught practicing straight Day of the Dead rituals without any coalescence with the Catholic faith were executed, were burned at the stake in Mexico City.
Oh, wow.
So it was essentially outlawed. Now Day of the Dead is celebrated as an indigenous holiday that is a positive thing. But for many, a great time period in Mexico, it was seen as retrograde. Native traditions were seen as backward and retrograde and evil, and were stomped out. But in those areas that were where the Mayan lived, these rituals continued. Survive today.
Yeah, but I think that's unfortunate because, from my understanding, my perspective of it, I think it's a pretty beautiful holiday to think that those that have actually passed, you're celebrating them, like their legacy kind of lives on, like you still carry them with you and you celebrate them. So that was interesting. I didn't know how much it went hand in hand with that. Thank you. Next question is, so what is the modern reincarceration of the holiday in Mexico? Or incarnation, so sorry.
Yeah, that's right. So we have these areas like Chiapas and Oaxaca, where this tradition, I think, has continued since the conquest. Whether it was underground during the 19th and 20th centuries, where Native culture was where the federal government attempted to stomp Native culture out, but it continued. Further north was more Catholic. In the 20th century, the Day of the Dead has caught on more in traditionally more Mexican areas like Mexico City and Guadalajara. We have icons crop up in the early 20th century, like La Catrina, the finely dressed Mexican lady in Mexican skull. This emerges during the Mexican Revolution with an artist, Guadalupe Posada. And he first draws this image of La Catrina, making fun of Mexican high-class women, elite women, who were denying their Mexican roots and trying to be like white Europeans. And he draws this caricature, La Catrina, to make fun of them. Diego Rivera takes up this image in a 1947 mural in Mexico City and paints himself as a little boy holding La Catrina's hand. And so her image becomes widespread throughout that area in Mexico. And she's incorporated into the Day of the Dead celebration. And now we see in places like Los Angeles and Mexico City and Guadalajara that women dress up every Day of the Dead every year as La Catrina. And they sort of beautify her image now, right? And the idea was that Posada was mocking these women, but also saying that even if you're really rich, you're going to die like all the rest. Whether you're a poor Mexican, a middle-class Mexican, or an elite Mexican woman in the government who denies her Mexican roots and wants to be French, you're going to die just like the rest of us. And so that's what La Catrina represents. Death is coming for us all.
Yeah. See, I also didn't know that's what the significance was behind that. And everyone, I'm pretty sure that knows what the Dia de los Muertos is, associates that with the image of her.
Yeah.
But I find that interesting that the concept of it is that everyone is going to die eventually, no matter what kind of lifestyle you live, no matter how different we may look, our socioeconomic status, we are all going to end soon. And so that's cool.
And it's interesting to think that image didn't arise until the early 20th century.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's always going to be relevant technically too, because it's the truth. Okay, and then the last question would be, how is it celebrated in LA?
LA has a very different flavor, right? If you look at the Day of the Dead celebration in Oaxaca, it's very traditional. This is a celebration that's been celebrated for hundreds of years by families in their own locales. They create altars. The altar, the ofrenda, is the center piece of the celebration. So you create an altar and you place images of loved ones who have passed. The marigold is the flower of the Day of the Dead, the flower of the dead. You strew marigolds from your doorway to the altar, and it creates a path of light for the souls to come in, enjoy the food and drink you've given them, and enjoy their family once again. And so the altar is the centerpiece, and it's a very spiritual time, very spiritual time for these families. They really believe that when they open the door, that the souls of their families are coming in to be with them and to eat their food. They have this. It's not just a time for partying, right? They really believe this. And after the celebration, November 2nd, when the adult souls have come through, they then go to the cemeteries. And before the celebration, families go to the cemeteries and decorate the graves of their loved ones with marigolds, and they go and have picnics and sing songs and have a celebration for the dead who have departed, who they believe are with them at that time. It's a very spiritual, rooted in generations, hundreds of years. In Los Angeles, of course, the people who are celebrating and dressing up know and respect this idea that the dead are coming back. But it takes on a very Los Angeles flavor, a very Hollywood flavor. The main celebration in Los Angeles is held at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Hollywood. And vendors are there, they have sponsors, they have contests, who dresses as the best Catrina, who has the best ofrenda altar. So it's a contest and a celebration in a way that Los Angeles does, right? There's lowriders, there's mariachis, there's music, there's taco trucks. Has a very Los Angeles flavor, and La Catrina takes on a very fashionable aspect in a way that Los Angeles does, right?
Yeah, I agree, because you see a lot of different makeup trends about how people do their makeup for Dia de los Muertos, and even just like how you said, the fashion aspect, how people dress up. But I think it's also cool that they do like a little twist to it, like an Americanized version, but they still keep the culture the same at the same time.
Well, that's what the Chicano culture is, right? It takes Mexican culture and mixes it with American identity, and that's Chicano. This is what Los Angeles has done, and it's not disrespectful. They respect the ancestral ties to Mexico, but they incorporate lowriders and Latino music and taco trucks, very American flavor, but still have a deep and profound respect for the holiday.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, that concludes the video for today. I just want to say thank you again, Dr. Fontes, for doing this and providing us with more information on Dia de los Muertos, as it is a beautiful holiday.